Well, welcome back. Good to see you again. Hope you guys are all doing well. Earlier this year I put out a video on this Stevens 820B, and since then I've had a question come through about the poly choke on the end of it. Specifically, what it is, how it works. So I'm just going to take some time today and go over that. So generally you'll see one of three things on the end of a shotgun barrel, either a fixed choke, a screw-in choke, or one of these poly chokes. No matter which one you have on the end of your gun, the function is the same, and that is to control the density of your shot pattern over a specified distance. So what do I mean by that? If you're already aware of this information, I apologize, just wanted to touch on it real quick, but let's say you take 3 different shots, each with a different choke size. Down here on the left, we've got improved cylinder, which is generally going to be a more open pattern, so you might see something kind of like this. In the middle here we have a modified choke, which is going to be a little bit tighter, still not the tightest that you can get, but a little bit more dense. And then over here on the right you have a full choke, which is generally going to be the tightest pattern that you can get. There are a few steps above a full choke yet, like a turkey choke, and there's a couple different types of chokes out there for goose hunting that would allow you to reach birds that are a little bit further away. But in general, this is a good illustration of what you'll see from something down on the more open end to the tighter end. So let's get in and take a little bit of a closer look at this Savage Super Choke specifically. So this one looks a little bit different than those that I've seen in the past just because of these flutes that are cut into it. I'm not 100% sure what the purpose was of that, if that was supposed to act like porting for the barrel like you see on some newer shotguns. But regardless, as far as I'm aware, that's something that's kind of unique to the Savage Super Choke. There are a few other chokes out there that are kind of similar to that, like, what was it? I think it was like the JC Higgins Power Pack, except that was a little bit more similar to a screw-in choke because although it looked like this, you could actually unthread the chokes, pull them out, and then thread in different ones. Whereas this, you don't necessarily unthread them, you just kind of twist it to the setting that you want. So this is really like a collet rather than something that you would completely remove and put in something else. So hopefully you can see that. Right now we are on the improved cylinder setting, which is going to be on the more open side of the choke, or open end of the choke, something that's going to give you that wider shot pattern over that specified distance. And the way this one was meant to work is whatever setting you wanted to shoot with, you would line up the mark with the front bead. So right now we're on improved cylinder, and if we rotate, I'll call this clockwise, we're now on modified. And mine's a little bit funky. That's about as tight as it gets, to the point that I can't quite get full all the way around to line up with the front bead. But for all intents and purposes, as soon as it gets tight, that's going to be your full choke. So there we have mod, improved cylinder, and then cylinder all the way back here at the end. And this one, I don't know, this one feels a little bit funky. It's super loose down here around cylinder, so I probably would never shoot it there. I would either probably shoot it on mod, improved cylinder, or full. But when I leave it in the safe, I usually leave it down around the improved cylinder mark there. So simply put, as a general rule of thumb, the further away something is that you're shooting at, the tighter you're going to want your choke, just to maintain that pattern density over the distance that you're covering. So depending on the choke system that you have, some of them were proprietary and sold with the guns from the factory. Others, like this one here, were made by third parties like herders and then attached as aftermarket accessories. I think some of them still came from the factory with aftermarket poly chokes on them just as options, but this one here is on the end of an Ithaca Model 37, and this is a herder's. I'm not sure how well you can see that, but this one is in much better shape than the Savage Super Choke on the end of that Stevens, and this one is a little bit different too in that it has detents for the positions, and I think this one also has 6 positions, whereas the Super Choke only had, I think, 4. So right now here we're down on the loose end again, or the open end with improved cylinder, and we're going to go clockwise with it. Now SM stands for semi-mod, or I sometimes call it sorta mod. Then you've got modified, improved modified, semi-full, and full. So this one has a little bit more granularity to it, a little bit more of a selection to choose from depending on what you're shooting at. Not the topic of this video, just a really pretty firearm, and that one's actually pretty old if I remember correctly. The serial number is down in the 40,000s, so that one's kind of a safe queen. She only comes out about once or twice a year. This is a JC Higgins Model 20. And you can see there it says proof tested 12 gauge full. This means that this barrel is a fixed full choke. So if we take a look down here in the end, no threads down there for a screw-in choke, no poly choke, nothing. Just a nice smooth bore, and that should be set to whatever size the determined fixed full was from the factory. And then the third and probably most common variety of chokes is just the screw-in choke. And I think the name kind of does a good job of describing what that is. And this is probably what you're going to see on most modern shotguns. So if we take a look in the muzzle there, not sure how well you're going to be able to see that, but this darker pattern there, that's actually threads. So these will usually come in little plastic containers whenever you buy the shotgun. And then again, depending on what you're hunting and what kind of shot density you want, you would just pick the appropriate choke, thread it in, and then you can snug it down with a choke wrench, which again usually comes with the gun when you buy it. So just something else to keep in mind too, just because a choke says it's a certain size doesn't always mean it's going to be that size. So I've gone through on each one of those firearms with a dial caliper and measured the different choke sizes. I specifically started doing that when I bought this Higgins Model 20 because that is set up currently as a slug gun. As a general rule of thumb, you're not really supposed to shoot slugs through a fixed full barrel, but I went ahead and measured that muzzle, and the diameter of that muzzle is actually larger than the improved cylinder choke in my Beretta A300. So I don't really have any issues putting slugs through that gun just because I went through, did the safety checks, made sure it was going to be okay. And that's actually a pretty solid, pretty accurate slug gun. But hopefully you can see these well. Like I said, I just went through and measured all the different settings on the poly chokes, and then just measured that one screw-in choke off of the Beretta, and then just out of curiosity again measured the Higgins. But you can see the variability in the actual diameter of the different choke settings. So if you have a specific choke in and you're shooting at something and you're not hitting what you want, maybe get your hands on a dial caliper and measure your choke and just see where you're at. Well, hopefully that answered some of your questions. I'm by no means a firearms expert, nor is any corner of the internet. So if you still find yourself having questions, feel free to contact your local gunsmith and ask them for help. I'm sure wherever you're at, you can probably find someone who is a professional that will be able to get you the answers that you need. When you're dealing with something like guns, always better to get your answers from a true professional when you can. But I am always happy to shed some light on the simpler stuff when I can. So I suppose that's going to do it, and until next time, take care, and we'll see you in the next one.